Hi there, it's Sonequa Martin Green, Sasha on The Walking Dead. You're listening to The Casting Dead with David and Matt.
Welcome to The Casting Dead, a podcast for The Walking Dead on AMC. I'm Matt.
And I'm David.
And today we'll be discussing Season 7, Episode 16, The First Day of the Rest of Your Life. And we have a very special guest with us today.
Hey guys, this is JK from Horror Happens Radio at horrorhappens.com. Guys, thank you so much for having me on and the ability to basically vent and get very emotionally charged about a season that you guys weren't too thrilled about, but I found some redemption in along the way, but not a lot.
When did we speak of that? No, I'm kidding. I'm so excited to have you here, man. I'm so glad you're here. It's an honor having you here, honestly. It's I've been a fan for a while now, since we've been introduced, I think, 2 years ago. And honestly, it's been great, and I'm so thrilled to have you here, man.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here with it, and David, Matthew, both of you guys have been really some really great episodes, especially this past season, talking about how this show has really kind of fallen to the wayside like a walker. I mean, it's really been interesting listening to what you guys have been able to do back and forth. David, as we had talked before and we had met face-to-face, Fantasia, Fantastic Fest, Horror Hound, just a lot of things. And real quick, guys, before we jump into the episode, that's something tonight, and don't let me stray from talking about this, from not telling about this, is the aspect of the convention side just this past weekend at Horror Hound Weekend, where Negan, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Jesus, as well as Dwight were all there, and Pollyanna McIntosh was there, and the reaction from the fans. So I want to add that because I think that impacts a lot of why this season turned out the way it did.
Yeah, I'm starting to believe. Well, I definitely believe that. But you know, obviously, we might just say it as it is, and you know what? We'll get to it for sure. And honestly, let's just get to this episode, see what we've built up for, and you know, let's pound it out.
Yeah, do it.
All right, so how about we get into the initial thoughts? Like, what did you guys think of this episode? Did it measure up to what you were hoping for? Did it let you down at all? What did you think?
Jay, be my guest. You go first.
All right, kicking it off. I mean, guys, for me, you know, this episode was kind of a cluster. And I think a lot of what plays into the season, as well as the fact of this episode, is there's too many moving pieces now to be able to have anything coherent going on. I mean, you know, granted, it was surrounded a lot by Sasha, but I think they went to an art house style to be able to create this episode, because between the dream sequences, the aspect of the symbolism that was a part of it, on top of the violence and the old school feel of The Walking Dead, it really kind of left a lot to be desired when it came to this. Overall, Negan was as amazing as always. I've been a big fan of his character, even through the different incarnations, the different sides of his personality. But it was a lot thrown into a, 85-minute box, and I think that they fell short on it.
I would somewhat agree with you. I didn't find this the most disappointing episode. I mean, like, I would put it amongst, like, I don't know. Would it be my top 10 favorite episodes? I would slide it up there. Though the thing is, just it was the lackluster leading up to it, I think. Where I don't know how to say as the episode alone, I think it was like a cheesy 80s action film.
Exactly.
That's what it was. I like cheesy 80s action films. The fact that we were able to keep a pace up, I felt like I don't know, for a lot, it's like that expression is like, you know, that there, you know, finally at the end they finally got it right. They finally learned how to be a good show at the end of the season.
Interesting. Matthew, what about you?
You know, at the end of this season, did you guys get a vibe that it was almost like a series finale?
You know what? I kind of did, actually.
Yeah, I wanted to like this episode so much. I wanted to like this season. I just had, from the very beginning, I had so many problems with the editing of this, the way they chose to chop everything up. It felt like 5 different directors telling 5 different stories and just fighting for screen time. And I wasn't, you know, there were issues I had with characters, like that's nothing to do with.
Oh yeah,
like you know, you never trust trash people.
And garbage pail kids.
Yeah, those Garbage Pail Kids. I had problems with having to see Abe again because I thought I was done with him.
Oh, man.
If they were going to bring back one of the two,
It should have been Glenn.
it should have been Glenn.
Definitely should have been Glenn. Yeah.
I did have a question because up until just now, when you mentioned the dream sequence, when I saw this, I assumed it was a conversation they had previously, seen through like rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, I interpret it as like a fantasy, actually. More like a fantasy, slightly truish. I mean, like, you don't trust memory that much, but, like, should you trust what they're showing us? It didn't seem definitive to me at all. Because the thing is, what I found weird about that fantasy is that she barely mentioned Glenn. It was always about Maggie. And I'm like, if this is taking place while Glenn was alive, why didn't she mention Glenn? She kept saying Maggie's got to take care of Maggie. It's like, well, no, Glenn's there. They're a couple. They're going to be parents. I don't understand how you neglect to mention Glenn. Yeah.
It was confusing to me, and maybe it'll take a few more watches before I can really figure it out. But there was a lot of, like, even the scenes with Maggie and Sasha sitting staring out into the sunset.
It was right, Little House on the Prairie.
Well, I thought this was them, at Heaven's Gates, and Maggie was also going to die in this episode, and it was just them ready to move on.
I would have loved that.
I didn't know where they were going for.
I would have loved that Guns N' Roses cover of Knock Knock on Heaven's Door, just right then and there. It would have been fitting to end the series. Hey, it won't be too late. We might see it again. We might see the whole gang there sitting on a log and that sunset.
Well, like they did that with Lost, where they had everyone in the church in the pew, and they sat there and they reflected on what was going on. But you know what, guys? It's interesting that you bring up the aspect of the dream sequence, because I think one thing that season 7 did, and this was brought up during a panel I did with the Sons of Anarchy, and Kim Coates talked about the last 2 seasons of the show, and basically he was talking to the cast, and it got so dark and it got so murky where they were questioning on who was dying this week, why were they dying, was there a reason why they were dying. I think The Walking Dead has reached that point where it's no longer about quality, it's just about putting out a product and giving a creative license, because AMC and Scott Gimple and Greg Nicotero think they know what they want for everybody, so they can do whatever they want, and they don't have to worry about anything falling back on them.
Well, I wish they would be like that most of the time, because I feel like we were just saying it before. They have this third opinion, which is the fans, which influences their quality apparently. But I guess we'll get further into it when we get into it. But let's get into the recap. Yeah, well, one quick question: does Maggie still have a torn uterus? Was that I don't think she's pregnant anymore.
Does she have a baby?
She's Bonnie from Family Guy, just the opposite.
I mean, she's every time we see her, she's skinnier and skinnier. I don't know. She's not taking it easy.
The other funny thing too is that Carl, this series was span like with 2 or 3 years, right? Carl jumped like 7 years. Obviously, he lived 7 years. So then Judith had already jumped 18 months, and then now Maggie's embryo barely grew. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Anyway,
it's really weird.
I'm nitpicking there, but it just seemed like she was not bedridden like the doctor told her to.
No, and you know what's funny? You know what's funny? I look at how she is, and I wonder if this is going to be a story arc for next year where, she's got that next baby. She's supposed to have the child, that next generation of whatever the human race is going to be. I wonder if they kind of take it in a different tone entirely, because they're showing no real evidence that she is pregnant. Is she pregnant? Why is she pregnant? And is there a religious circular around it? Because that's something. It's like immaculate conception almost with what's going on with this. It's really weird how they're handling it. And with this show, the way it ended, I'm not sure what to expect for season 8.
Maybe it's a zonomorph.
Yeah. There you go.
So yeah, let's we'll dive into the recap here and see where that takes us. We open up on Sasha. She's in the dark listening to music. Sounds of cars can be heard, so we know she's being taken somewhere. And we're in agreement that we see her die right here, right?
Okay, yeah.
Pretty sure she took those pills. They showed us in the previously on. The last thing they said was talking about the pills that Eugene had made.
Yeah, I mean, she was going to do the switcheroo on Negan or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, guys, can I ask you, I think it was Donnie Washington was the artist that was on the iPod, and it was like Chuck Mangione that was playing there. But was there a significance to the music she was listening to? Because after watching this season, all that, I didn't see any sort of connection. Was there a reason?
Didn't look like it to me at all. I don't know. I mean, like the fact that you even got an iPod of that generation
from the marketplace,
that song. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I don't know. I mean, I don't know how this context fit, but whatever. I mean, like I let them get away with that. Like I find like that showing her dying once in a while in that coffin, that theatrical coffin, did work for me. But it was the flashbacks when we get to it. I feel like that's something that's a little out of context.
Yeah,
right, I agree.
I mean, she took the pill to someday we'll all be free,
right?
But the rest, I don't know exactly the relevance. But so at this point, we know that she's dead, and we know this is how the episode is going to end. Is she's already gone. So I felt like that took out some of the punch in it. It also made me not care so much about the dream sequences or the flashbacks or whatever they were, because both of the people we're looking at are dead. And I don't want them to try to retroactively build up their character or try to have them have... Like, Abe doesn't get a second chance for more character development. Like, they killed him off. You don't get to go back and tell us this is how we should feel because... this is what we're telling you now.
Especially not for Abraham. I'm not
for
saying...
Abraham. I'm just not a fan of Abraham, so I'm being a little harsh on him.
I don't hate him that much. I'm just saying it is too much for a secondary character. I mean, Glenn should be the one that he should be like. He's the reason why Rick is alive. They go about it. They talk about it in the episode. Why shouldn't they have any more screen time? I don't understand.
It's lazy storytelling to say the least. Because you go ahead and you're finding a means to an end with Sasha in there. You're giving her that send off because. The last 3-4 episodes, how vague and how poorly edited is the entire experience once she enters the compound. I mean, you sit back and I heard you guys talking in a previous episode. You open up last episode or the episode before, and you're like, "What wappened? Did she get abducted?
Right?
Where's Rapey Dave coming into this?
Don't address me, Matthew. Don't you dare. He's pointing his finger at me.
But, I mean, you really sit back and you go, her last episodes are really kind of a mess. And maybe this is just a simple way to get the fans behind it to make them forget because they look at it and they say, you know what? He was a fun character. We bring it back. It kind of makes you forget about the rest of the stuff. It's very lazy storytelling to bring back a secondary character as well as the way that she went out. She deserved more.
Yeah, and I feel like you're cheating too because they're just the flashback is them on their couch. They embrace for the first time ever. You've never seen any affection with this couple ever until this episode. And I'm there and I'm like, why would if I was thinking about something that seemed more meaningful is like when they're in the RV in the Winnebago, just bringing Maggie to Hilltop. They had a conversation about having a child. They should probably expand more on that scene because I felt like that scene seemed a little bit more empty at the time when we saw that finale. That was like last season's finale. So. I don't know, man. I mean, it was lazy. Everything about up until late for Sasha, I felt bad for her because her character has been through a lot, especially with Tyrese, with Bob, and now this with Abraham. And this should be the cataclysmic moment where it's like this is the boiling point for her. And then we see her going to the sanctuary. We don't even know what she did, how she got where she was,
right.
So that's already, they skipped through that. They probably could have had the finale end there if they had elaborated so much more on that. And that's it. This is how it ends. I mean, I find it fitting from what we see later on, but overall, it's not fitting for her character at all. No.
And I mean, I repaired some of the editing mistakes in my recap here. I put it all together because it took up the entire episode, but really all that happened. Abraham mentions how Maggie's sick. Sasha says Maggie needs to take care of Maggie. Then Abe says that she's carrying the future like we talked about and that everyone's going to die. May as well die for something. May as well make it count. And that's kind of where that ends. The placement of those scenes were somewhat strategic. That last line, we may as well make it count for something. It added a bit to what we saw at the end with Sasha turning and coming out, but I just felt like most of it didn't add anything to the story.
No, it was a dream that came true for her at the end, and in that process for us, we sat there scratching our heads. And again, you know what, guys? You talk about it a lot when it comes to the way this season has gone, what the writing has been about.
Oh, yeah.
And the dialogue right there is a great example of really someone's pipe dream to make their creative words come true rather than something that fits what the narrative, what the storyline should be.
Oh, yeah. They're patting themselves on the back, I'm sure. It's just to see your words come to life. I'm sure it's got to be a great feeling, but I just didn't feel like it. They're not seeing the story overall. They're just seeing
They're finding
works.
they're finding easy way for means to an end, and not really exploring the character properly. Because even where Morgan's going now, after what he did, like, a couple of episodes ago, you're like, why would you go about it like that? I just don't get how this helps the character, how it's believable, like how we already spoke about that, but like that just tallies to everything that goes on with their character writing, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I'm coming